Europe today stands at historic crossroads. To its east looms a familiar challenge: Russia, assertive, revisionist, and increasingly comfortable with force. Across the Atlantic stands a far more unsettling reality: an unpredictable America under Donald Trump, no longer willing to play Europe's unpaid bodyguard. For more than 3 decades, Europe has lived inside a comforting illusion. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1990, the continent was gifted what economists lovingly call the peace dividend. Tanks were scrapped, battalions disbanded, ammunition stockpiles allowed to rot. Defense budgets shrank year after year, while savings flowed into welfare, infrastructure, and prosperity. And why not? After all, the Americans stayed. US troops remained stationed across Europe, NATO umbrellas stayed open, European security came at a bargain price, almost free. But history has a habit of sending invoices long after the party is over. Donald Trump brutally delivered that invoice. Suddenly, Europe was told that it had refused to hear for decades. Security is not a charity, and sovereignty cannot be outsourced forever. The problem is, you cannot rebuild armies overnight. Decades of neglect cannot be reversed in 2 or 3 budget cycles. Modern militaries are not just weapons. They are logistics, doctrine, manpower, training, industrial capacity, and above all, time. Time Europe no longer has. Trump understands this weakness perfectly. That is why his administration applies maximum pressure: economic, diplomatic, and increasingly strategic. The idea of an American takeover of Greenland, once dismissed as absurd, suddenly fits neatly into the century-old US strategic ambition. For Denmark, and by extension Europe, this may already be a red line crossed. The real question isn't whether Trump wants Greenland. The real question is far more uncomfortable. If force were used, could Denmark and its European allies stop it? The honest answer is no, not today. Neither individually nor collectively are Western European militaries capable of resisting American military power. Even symbolic resistance would risk catastrophic casualties, almost entirely on the European side. Trump knows this. Europe knows this. If push came to a shove, the scenario wouldn't be a conventional war. It would be limited special forces operation, minimal American losses, rapid achievement of objectives. The political fallout would be enormous. NATO would effectively collapse. The Atlantic bridge would burn. But Trump may be willing to pay that price, backed by a domestic base that sees Europe not as an ally but as a freeloader. What makes this moment tragic is that Europe was once a military giant. Britain, France, Germany, Italy. Not long ago, these nations fielded some of the most powerful forces on earth. Today, the reality is sobering. In the Global Firepower Index 2026, France, the strongest among them, ranks 6th. Even South Korea ranks higher. And Europe's problems go deeper than rankings. Aging populations, median ages above 40. Italy nearing 45. Shrinking pools of able-bodied manpower, chronic shortages of ammunition and war reserves, defense industries hollowed out by decades of underinvestment. Individually, recovery is impossible. But collectively, Europe still has the resources, technologic, economic, and strategic depth to matter. That is the critical truth. Europe does not need another NATO-style committee. It does not need loose coordination of symbolic battle groups. What it needs is something far bolder: a unified European military, a single command structure, integrated forces, shared procurement, common doctrine, a defense identity that matches Europe's economic and political weight. Look at the world's major powers: the United States, Russia, China, India. They all share one thing: scale, manpower, stockpile, industrial depth, strategic endurance. No European nation can match them alone. But Europe together can. If Europeans could build a unified currency like the euro, overcoming centuries of rivalry, then the question must be asked: why not a unified military? The very existence of such a force would change the global calculations overnight. It would deter not only Russia, but anyone tempted to treat Europe as expendable, including the United States. Let's be clear, Trump's Greenland threat exists because Europe looks weak. Power invites respect. Weakness invites appetite. As Canada's Prime Minister once warned, if you are not at the table, you are on the menu.
That Every day, we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't. Argue the middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu.
And Europe today is dangerously close to being served. If America retreats from defending Europe, what stops Vladimir Putin from testing the continent's eastern flank even further? What stops revisionist ambitions from Kaliningrad to Balkans, from the Arctic to eastern Germany? What sounds unthinkable today becomes inevitable tomorrow when deterrence disappears. The harsh truth is this: Europe fell asleep after the Cold War, and it is waking up very late. And it is not too late yet. The choice before Europe is simple: remain a wealthy but vulnerable collection of states, or become a unified strategic power capable of defending its future. History is watching, and this time Europe must not sleep through the alarm.